Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metropolis Radio. Today is going to be quite a long one. Now, I know that these articles are old, but I think that they are more relevant now than ever because No Time to Die is set to come out October 8th, 2021. So as of uploading this, that's only about a month away. And I just came across this article here that is titled, What James Bond Needs to Do to Fix the Franchise After No Time to Die. The James Bond franchise needs to be reinvented when Daniel Craig leaves after No Time to Die with a new supporting cast and spin-off stories. The spin-off stories, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I completely disagree with. New supporting cast, yes, because the Daniel Craig era has been nothing but a goddamn disaster. But let's get right into this. After the release of No Time to Die, the James Bond franchise needs to radically rethink its tone and aesthetic to win a new generation of viewers. Well, no fucking shit. I remember when people were crying and bitching about No Time to Die being too ridiculous, and now people are complaining that the movies aren't lighthearted. It's like, pick a fucking lane here. Since the series began in 1962 with Dr. No, the Bond series has been through 6 different 007s. In that time, the series has also been through more varied tones and aesthetics than almost any other movie franchise. Yes, it has evolved with the times, and that's, one of the reasons it's been so successful for damn near the last 60 years. Most long-running series pick a style and stick with it, but this has never been the case for James Bond. Sean Connery's tenure saw the series take the central character relatively seriously, despite how heightened and over-the-top many of the love interests and villains he encountered were, whereas Live and Let Die saw Roger Moore reinvent 007 as a goofier character altogether. Timothy Dalton brought more edge and gravitas to Bond after Moore, only for Pierce Brosnan's time to bring back the franchise streak of silly, self-aware humor. In recent years, Brosnan's undoing of Dalton's self-serious Bond has itself been underdone by Daniel Craig's grounded iteration. Since its debut with 2006's Casino Royale, Craig has brought a tortured intensity to the part and made the character a morally ambiguous anti-hero for the post-Bourne world. There's your fucking problem right there, is that James Bond wanted to be more like Jason Bourne. They didn't want to make a James Bond movie. They wanted to make a Jason Bourne movie with Casino Royale. And I'm being 100% honest, guys. Be 100% honest with yourselves. If James Bond 007 was not attached to Casino Royale, everybody would have written that movie off as a Jason Bourne clone. However, as Craig's time reaches a close, the Bond franchise has gotten stale and needs a tonal revamp. So maybe going super serious for so long doesn't really work out for James Bond. A brutal Bourne-style Bond was fresh and innovative in the early 2000s. No, it wasn't. When blockbuster cinema was starting to turn toward darker themes. Turning James Bond into Jason Bourne was not really, all that innovative. It was just basically copying Jason Bourne by their own admission. However, in the years since, fun and self-aware humor have re-entered the multiplex thanks to the likes of the sprawling MCU or the mega-successful Fast and Furious franchise. You're also forgetting about Kingsman, which is more in the style of those older James Bond films. To keep up, Bond needs another reinvention after Craig's swan song No Time to Die finally comes out, and this reboot will need to fundamentally reimagine what the series can achieve. Here's the first point the article makes. James Bond needs an expanded universe. My instant response to this is fuck no. James Bond does not need a fucking expanded universe. Not every fucking movie franchise has to be a fucking expanded universe. For crying out loud. Few things are true of every screen incarnation of Ian Fleming's suave spy, but one thing viewers can rely on is the fact that James Bond has always been a lone wolf. Despite multiple actors playing his boss M, Bond has always taken orders as suggestions and gone rogue when necessary. Yeah, that's part of the charm to James Bond. Very much a fuck you kind of guy. Some outings don't even feature an appearance from his secretary, Miss Moneypenny, or gadget maker Q, particularly in the Craig era. Well, yeah, because the Daniel Craig era of James Bond got away from the 3 Gs, the guns, the gadgets, and the girls. That made the first 20 James Bond movies, some of them not great. I mean, Octopussy ring a fucking bell, but no, you want to get away from the 3 Gs. There's no need for Q. However, to keep up with the demands of the contemporary blockbuster landscape, the James Bond franchise needs to broaden its scope. This could mean a Kingsman-style spin-off that shows the trials that young MI6 candidates are put through, or a self-contained backstory for one of the franchise's many notable villains. No, you don't fucking need that. Do you know what the James Bond franchise desperately fucking needs? Return to its roots. Go back to when James Bond was a fucking pulp character. That's been the problem with the Daniel Craig era, is that everything has to be super dark and super serious. Just go back to James Bond being a pulp character. Done. You just fixed the fucking franchise right there. In either case, an expanded universe would let the series show off its dramatic potential without every outing need being centered around MI6's most famous employee. Making a James Bond movie without James Bond. I don't think it's going to work out the way that this author hopes. Viewers have never seen the other agents presumably supporting Bond behind the scenes, and the grueling training they presumably go through would be ideal fodder for a spinoff. Again, I heavily fucking disagree. You don't need to take the attention off of James Bond. Meanwhile, Spectre's worst twist proved that Bond's villains could be given better backstories that make them more believable and engaging, instead of last-ditch efforts to connect them with the central character. Oh, they must be referencing when they made Blofeld Bond's half-brother. Yeah, that was incredibly fucking stupid. But here's the second point. But less focus on the character's backstory. Wait a minute. You just advocated that we need self-contained backstories for this expanded universe, but you don't want to focus on Bond's backstory. That one, okay, not focusing on Bond's backstory, I can agree with. That's the one aspect of Skyfall I truly did not like. However, just because the series needs to broaden the character it focuses on does not mean it has an excuse for more interminable backstory. Throughout the Daniel Craig era, it has become clear the franchise can't give the character a sad story to root his troubled outlook in, since this will prove endlessly complicated when the version of Bond is inevitably replaced. If viewers discover, for example, that Bond grew up rich in Skyfall Estate, would this still be true for the next actor who follows Craig's version? It fucking shouldn't. Or will each new Bond need a new canon backstory, which would mean another origin every time the role is recast? Well, they shouldn't have expanded on Bond's backstory to begin with in the Daniel Craig era. The most backstory that we got about James Bond is he was originally from Scotland, and that was it. That's all the backstory that we had from Dr. No up through Die Another Day, and that sufficed. This approach may not work for superhero movies, but trying to ground Bond's character with a backstory is only going to complicate things and offer none of the fun escapism audiences come to espionage movies for. Again, and I guarantee you, this author was one of those motherfuckers back in 2002 complaining that Die Another Day was quote-unquote too ridiculous, but now wants James Bond to go back to being more ridiculous because, oh my god, James Bond is now too dark. It would be reasonable to wonder then how Bond can expand his cinematic universe without adding to his already overstuffed backstory. The backstory that was completely unnecessary, but the answer is not impossible to discern. The series needs to move away from the man himself and revive interest in Bond's supporting stars by adding new faces to the lineup. Okay. If they were to do that, the series needs to move away from the man himself. Okay, franchise over. That's exactly what's going to fucking happen. Try making a James Bond movie without James Bond. See how well that goes. And here's the third and final point to this article. James Bond needs a new support staff. Now, let's actually hear this out. Paddington star Ben Whishaw has proven himself a solid pick, but Bond needs a new Q. I wholeheartedly agree. My biggest issue with Ben Whishaw taking over the role is he's way too young to be Q. Whereas if you take a look at Desmond Llewellyn's first outing as Q, this was back in From Russia with Love, he was already, much older, whereas Ben Whishaw looks like a Mark Zuckerberg wannabe. If the franchise is to be reinvented successfully, Wishaw's nebbish data geek worked alongside Craig's deadpan leading man, but to reboot the franchise wholesale, it needs to drop the existing support staff surrounding in favor of new faces who can add a lighter tone. Replacing Ralph Fiennes' M and Wishaw's Q would allow the careers to add more diversity to the lineup while also severing ties with the Craig continuity. There's nothing wrong with Ralph Fiennes portraying M. It's just Wishaw's Q is way too young. But let's go ahead and let's continue here. A new support staff will also allow the series to recast villainous staple Blofeld and drop that unnecessary foster brother backstory of the Craig era. Yeah, that was incredibly fucking dumb. That's just millennial action movie. Oh my god, we gotta make the villain related to the fucking hero. With a slew of new faces, the movies can thus be reborn as a more fun, freewheeling spy franchise that casts off the dark, foreboding tone of the Daniel Craig movies. Naomi Harris as Miss Moneypenny is the most fully realized incarnation so far. No, she's not. Naomi Harris as Miss Moneypenny ruined the character. She's only a secretary because she's an incompetent field agent. That really was that's Naomi Harris as Miss Moneypenny for you. And would be an unfortunate loss for the franchise. Not to me personally. However, her version of Miss Moneypenny is inextricably linked to Craig's Bond, and relieving Harris of the part would not only give room for a new performer to take on the iconic role, but it could free Harris up to play M. Why? Why would you promote her up? Bond's best boss was Judi Dench's razor-sharp iteration, and Harris has proven more than up for the task of keeping Bond in line. Recasting Bond's support staff while keeping Harris on board as M, along with an expanded universe approach and less focus on backstory, would reignite audience interest in the James Bond brand after the release of No Time to Die marks Craig's departure. Okay, so they bring up Judi Dench as M. Do you know why Judi Dench got the role of M? Well, let's see. Bernard Lee died, the actor who played M from Dr. No all the way up through Moonraker. And for the life of me, I can't remember who took over the role after that, because I know M made a couple of appearances afterwards. You had Moneypenny, that was played by Lois Maxwell. Now, granted, she didn't die from the role, but after 14 movies, she left. Oh, and then you had Desmond Llewellyn as Q, going from Russia with Love all the way up through The World Is Not Enough, only being recasted with John Cleese after his fucking death. So the only time that you really see, Bond supporting characters, get recast is either when they want to retire or they die. So, it's not a bad idea to distance yourself from the Daniel Craig era, because like I said, the Daniel Craig era has been nothing but a it's been a Jason Bourne clone ever since Daniel Craig took over. So returning to James Bond's roots is what's absolutely necessary, and they're not bringing that up. They need to return to the pulp character. Now let's go back and examine this article. Now this one is a little older. This came out October 9, 2020. That's James Bond 26. Bond needs to be fun again when Daniel Craig leaves. No Time to Die finally arrives in 2021, but when Craig is replaced as James Bond, the series needs to return to the tone of its sillier earlier years, despite the fact that we fucking complained about it. But I've already brought that up many times already. James Bond needs to be fun again when Daniel Craig leaves the spy franchise behind. 007's 25th outing is finally hitting cinemas in 2021. But when Daniel Craig is replaced in the role of the super spy, the series needs to return to the tone of sillier, more fun earlier years. With No Time to Die, Daniel Craig's time as James Bond is coming to an end. Currently, Mad Max star Tom Hardy, a perfect fit for Bond despite his age, is rumored to be replacing the actor in the role. I think that rumor was unconfirmed. Again, guys, this article came out end of October 2020. When Daniel Craig's edgier Bond debuted, he arrived in cineplexes where gritty realism was the order of the day, even in big-budget blockbuster cinema. Yeah, thanks, Jason Bourne. Conflict as anti-heroes like Matt Damon's Jason Bourne and Christian Bale's tortured Dark Knight-era Batman had put the self-aware campiness of the 90s behind them and ushered in a more stoic, realistic era of action heroes, one which lasted until the next decade. However, the arrival of the MCU, and particularly the massive success of the Avengers, meant that by 2012, audiences were falling back in love with the charming, occasionally goofy heroes who didn't let their dark past get in the way of smart-ass dialogue and faced off against villains whose campiness didn't make them any less threatening. I don't agree with that with regards to the MCU, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. Heath Ledger's unnervingly realistic Joker was out, and Tom Hiddleston's theatrical Loki was in, but Bond remained more grounded and darker as Craig's tenure in the role continued. Now with the character changing actors, it's the right time for Bond to lighten up, and here's the first point this article makes. Craig's Bond was darker than ever. The Daniel Craig version of James Bond was not only a PTSD afflicted, relatively realistic depiction of the spy compared to Sean Connery's original 007. He was surrounded by a new staff who were affected, and in the case of Judi Dench's M, killed by his work. Where the James Bond series used to have little continuity between films, little to no continuity. Like I said, the films from Dr. No up through Die Another Day, none of them were direct sequels to each other. Typically returning to the status quo sitcom style, Craig's version of the character took the continuity, acknowledging self-serious Bond of Timothy Dalton's era, and cranked the darkness up to 11. License to Kill was not a direct sequel to The Living Daylights there, so I don't know why they're bringing Timothy Dalton's James Bond there. Where Dalton's more grounded Bond lost a love interest to provide him a dark backstory for a second film, Craig's Bond is so dark and gloomy that even perky secretary Miss Moneypenny got a brutal backstory wherein she accidentally almost killed Bond in the line of duty. It would be almost impossible for the James Bond series to delve into even darker territory than Craig's Casino Royale 007 origin story did, without also losing the essential levity, humor, and goofiness that makes 007's franchise so appealing. So the opposite approach would be the best way to reinvent the series for a new Bond. Pierce Brosnan's debut in the role saw the James Bond franchise lighten its tone significantly after the heavier Dalton outings and win over critics in the process, as a more suave and less psychologically damaged Bond doesn't necessarily have to mean a less impactful version of the character or a less dramatic film. And here's the second point, and the one I tend to agree with. Bond's best outings are over the top. And guys, that image that you're seeing up on the screen, that is directly from Moonraker. Probably one of the most ridiculous James Bond movies ever made. Many of the superstars' best remembered adventures are pretty cartoony and unrealistic. Whether it is the exploding villain of Live and Let Die, Moonraker's space-based Star Wars-inspired plot, or Blofeld's Dr. Evil / Hank Scorpio-inspired turn in Diamonds Are Forever, the James Bond series is beloved for, not despite, its occasional absurdity, and without elements like hollowed out mountain layers and zany schemes to engineer artificial earthquakes. There's not a lot separating Bond from his less over-the-top spy thriller competitors, despite how pivotal the zany elements of Bond are to appeal of the series. However, they never fully gelled well with the stone-faced tone of Craig's Bond. One criticism of the upcoming No Time to Die, for example, is that the primary villain, Rami Malek's anarchist Safin, could be too realistic for fans of the franchise to find his scheme exciting or incredulous. Fortunately, Craig's Bond movies are mostly fast-paced enough to paper over the issue of their too believable tone. Spectre was a movie that moved so goddamn slow, but that's just my opinion, you know. I firmly believe that people who love the Daniel Craig era, and apologies for the true Bond fans that truly like Daniel Craig's movies, I feel that the vast majority of those people were not James Bond fans to begin with. They were Jason Bourne fans. But it becomes too obvious on a rewatch that the actors' outings are split between the goofier elements of early Bond films and the more grounded style of modern spy movies. Darker outings like Quantum of Solace bored audiences as they lacked any campy appeal or fun elements, but in contrast, the more cartoony elements of Craig's films, such as Javier Bardem's hammy Skyfall villain, jarred with the otherwise comparatively realistic tone of the rest of the movie. A return to the series' sillier origins could make for a more fun, lighthearted Bond outing that isn't in conflict with the sense of fun, particularly when the success of the blockbuster Kingsman franchise proves that there is a public appetite for a less self-serious British super spy. And I think that's why Kingsman has really took off at the time, is because Kingsman felt more like James Bond than James Bond felt. And then here's the article's third and final point here. A new tone would make a new Bond stand out. Well, no shit. More than anything, the next Bond needs a new, fresh tone because Craig's Bond will be a hard act to follow. Not really. But again, that's just my opinion, of course. As serious as his iteration of the character is, and as dark as his motives are, he's also rightfully beloved as a suave iteration of the character with a few punchy, intense installments to his name. I remember a time when Daniel Craig's casting as James Bond was quite controversial. And I also remember, but I think it was before Spectre came out, he also famously said that he would rather slit his wrists than play James Bond again. Yet he came back for No Time to Die. Spectre and Skyfall were well reviewed and expectations are high for No Time to Die, whose twins villains Safin and Blofeld and star-studded supporting cast, including Ana de Armas and Lashana Lynch, ensure that this will be an ambitious, if potentially overstuffed, final outing for the character. Instead of trying to one-up the appeal of Craig's Bond by trying to make an even darker, more realistic Bond, the series could benefit from a lighter touch, much like Brosnan's Bond brought back the goofier elements of the series to follow Timothy Dalton's critically acclaimed realistic version of the character, who in turn was written as a response to his predecessor Roger Moore's uber camp later films. The James Bond movies have always needed to move between light and dark extremes when it comes to tone. Brosnan's final outing, Die Another Day, was almost too cartoony to fit the franchise. No, Die Another Day was just fine, resulting in the relative realism of Casino Royale. As such, this tradition needs to be kept alive by the next film, allowing the series to reincorporate some more over-the-top elements to stay true to the escapist appeal of James Bond as an iconic character. Now, despite the fact that I've been yelling and cussing throughout this whole thing, I actually do agree that, you need to reinvent James Bond, go back and make the series a little more campy, but also go back and make him more of a pulp hero. Stop trying to connect all of these movies and make all of these movie sequels to each other. That was the downfall of Daniel Craig's James Bond. Every movie from Dr. No up through Die Another Day just felt like you were watching the next mission. You could jump into the franchise at any point. But the problem with the Daniel Craig era from Casino Royale now up through No Time to Die is that you have to watch all of the movies starting with Casino Royale, and that approach was always going to fall apart, in my opinion. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and end it right here because I have dragged this out as long as it needs to go. If you stuck around this long, thanks so much for doing so. And if you guys have been following me long enough, you know I am terrible at ending these videos, so I will just see you guys next time.